Okay, so I'm here to talk about continuous integration. Before we get started, I'll let you know who I am and do some intros. So, I can't see them. It's doing its thing, yeah. Great. This is not my laptop, so I'm just checking it's doing everything. Okay, so yes, my name is Susie Prince. I am head of product at ThoughtWorks Products Division. We create tools for software developers and DevOps teams. I have been working in software for over 10 years, primarily as a product management role, but always for developer tools, creating those tools for software developers. My accent, sometimes a lot of people, when I speak, ask me about it. I'm a Brit, but I have not lived in the UK for about 10 or 12 years. I currently live in San Francisco. And if you want to get hold of me when I'm not in Baltimore, I'm there on Twitter, at PM_Susie. So for those of you who are not familiar with ThoughtWorks, we are primarily a software consultancy. We build and help our clients deliver software for their organizations. But like I said, we also create our own software as well. We are a very diverse bunch. There are 4,000 people in ThoughtWorks across 40 different offices in 14 countries. And one of our key sort of tenets or principles that we hold close to our heart is that we want to help and expand the knowledge around software development and basically give back to our community and help us all be better. We do that in the form of a bunch of different things. First of all, the products that we make. Secondly, we write a lot of books and articles. My colleagues are very accomplished at writing books. And we also build a lot of open source software. We were behind the first continuous integration server. Some of you may know it. It's called Cruise Control. We also built the first continuous delivery server with pipelines, which is called Go. That's in the department that I work in. And we are also some of the people behind Selenium, which I'm sure many of you are using. And then finally, my colleague, Jess Humble, who worked with us in the products division, actually was one of the authors of the continuous delivery book, which I highly recommend if you have not read that book before. It's very practical, but also high level, gives you an introduction to continuous delivery. I'm happy to talk more about ThoughtWorks, the stuff that we do, or Jess's book later on. But I'm here today to talk to you about continuous integration and specifically tell you a love story about continuous integration, starting off with why we fell in love with continuous integration and moving on to what our current relationship status with continuous integration is. I'll start off with some explanations, so for those of you who are not familiar, we can all start off together and then take you on this journey. So, to get us started, I would like to learn a bit more about all of you. So just a couple of questions. If you have heard of continuous integration, can you please raise your hands? Great, good. And for those of you who are practicing continuous integration, can you raise your hands? All right, great. So we are on a good footing. You all know what it is, and a lot of you are doing it. So I will take us through a quick review so you understand what I think continuous integration is, and then I'll tell you where we all are with it. So what is continuous integration? All of you know, but for those of you who don't, continuous integration is basically a process where developers or software engineers, they write code, they integrate it together on a CI server, they build and test it, they get a result, and the result comes back to them. It looks a little bit like this. So the code goes to the integration server, they build, test, and deploy. It sends a result back to the developer team, and they know whether their result was correct or not. The same thing happens again. It goes round. Is it going round? Okay, great. And they get a different result. So that's basically the process. You build code, you check it in, it goes into an integration server, and you get these results back. which I think is probably what most of you are doing. But I think there are some more important principles and fundamentals about continuous integration that sometimes we forget. And I think two of the key parts of that are shown to us in this quote by Jez from his website, continuousdelivery.com. And let's read it together. CI developers integrate all their work into trunk, it's also called mainline or master, on a regular basis, and that's basically at least daily. So the two key parts there that I think are really important, which we didn't see when we just looked at that process of continuous integration, are that you check into master, or mainline or trunk, whatever you want to call it, and you do that at least daily, at least once daily. So these are the two parts that I think people sometimes forget about continuous integration, and that I think are key to that particular practice. There are also a bunch of other things, and we'll go through them quickly, that I think are important. So you check everything in. This seems fairly fundamental, but you'll be surprised how often I come across teams who sometimes have pieces of their code base not checked in and assume that it being on a developer machine it's just going to work like that. A key part of this is that you have every single thing you need to build your software checked into your source repository. A good test for that would be to get someone new to your team or a virgin laptop and just check everything out from your source control, and if you can build your software, you're doing this, and if you can't, then there's probably something missing. The second thing is that you build every commit. So we don't skip commits, we don't schedule commits, we don't build this only at night. Every single time somebody checks in software, we build this together, we test it, and we send a result back to our team. And to be able to do that, you basically have to automate it. So a lot of these things require some of the tools that you'll see around here, some of the tools that my company makes, and they help you automate this process so that when you check in, everything happens as you expect it to. And we also want to keep this fast. This is basically a feedback loop, so you saw it go round and round there. In order for feedback to work quickly and to be effective, we really need it to be fast. So keep your build fast and make sure that that automation is happening, and it'll help you do that. You also need to have self-testing code. So this is really key to continuous integration. It's no good if you check everything in and you get a nice result because nothing's actually being tested. You need to make sure that your tests are in the same source repository as your rest of your code, and that they are thorough and giving you valid results. So if you see a failure because your test fast, that's actually a good thing. So you want to make sure that you have good coverage on your tests and that you get results back to your team. You also want to show your failures visibly. So this could be a siren. On a team that I used to work on, it was a Homer Simpson saying "doe." It doesn't really matter. You just need to know when your build fails, that it's failed, and that everybody knows. And then you need to fix your failures immediately. We don't check in on broken builds. We don't leave a big long red line of broken builds. The reason you're getting that feedback is to tell you that something is wrong, and you need to address it quickly and move on. So those are some of the things that I think make continuous integration important, and hopefully they were a recap for you. But just to remind you, the two things that I think are most important are that you are checking into a master branch, and you're doing that on a daily basis. So let's take a look at why is this process important? Why am I here telling you? Why do I think it's important enough to take up your time today? The primary reason is that it helps you avoid merge conflicts, and this will be the main reason continuous integration has started in the first place, is that in a traditional software project, you'd have this period of time where you would build a lot of code independently, a bunch of different machines, and then at the very end, you would have this event, an emerging event, an integration event, and it would probably suck quite a lot because there would be a lot of conflict between those code bases, and it would be a lot of pain and rework. So the idea of continuous integration is that you take all of that pain that was happened at the end of your process, and you basically have pain all the time, because every single time you check in, you get this little bit of pain, and you go through that conflict, and you don't have to do it all at once. And that would be the primary reason. And I think, I like this phrase, it's called frequency reduces difficulty. I think it seems sort of perhaps not right that you would want to do something painful more often, but in the case of continuous integration, it actually helps you do a bunch of things. Helps you get some feedback. So when you're not doing that event till the very end, you basically have no idea whether everything you built is working correctly. You don't have any information about whether it's going to work correctly with everybody else's code. And as a product manager, I don't get an opportunity to see that working software as often. But if we're building it together and it's working all the time, then that's an opportunity for me to also give my feedback. It also reduces risks. Perhaps we didn't build this in the architecture that my team agreed, or perhaps it doesn't do the thing we thought it was going to do, or perhaps it doesn't meet the business requirements. I get a chance to remove those assumptions and reduce those risks sooner and more often. And the final reason, and I think this one maybe you haven't thought about before, and I think is particularly relevant when we talk about CI in the context of DevOps, is that I think it's actually quite an important cultural practice for software development teams to be doing it. It actually creates a sense of collective ownership. So no longer is that code my code, no longer is that broken build my broken build, it's our code, it's our broken build, it's our problem, and we're going to solve it together. We're going to reduce the risk together, and we're going to build that ownership together. So I think CI is a key practice for those of you who are trying to build a collaborative and a sort of co-owning culture to think about that collective ownership of continuous integration. So let's take a quick look of sort of our love story so far. So continuous integration came around in the 90s when it was first termed, and it grew in popularity in the early 2000s when it was stated as a key process in extreme programming, or XP, which is one of our first agile processes. And then throughout the 2000s, a bunch of books were written. It's quoted in a whole bunch of continuous integration, continuous delivery books, and we see the first CI servers being available. Right up till now, when we have many CI servers available, and even some of the processes like Scaled Agile Framework for Enterprises, which is a very nice managerial process, is still saying that CI is a key practice for Agile and DevOps teams. So you can see it's got some great benefits, sort of been ramping up over time, whole bunch of tools, you all put your hands up, sounds like a pretty sweet love story, right? Where's the bittersweet part? Well, I'm afraid I need to tell you some home truths about CI, and maybe some truths that some of you are actually doing in your CI practice that make it not quite look as hunky-dory as this particular story has led us to believe. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that our relationship status with continuous integration is complicated, and I'll tell you why. This is some data from Stack Overflow. They run a developer survey each year, and one of the questions that they asked last year in their 2016 survey is, how often do you check in code, or how often do you commit code? And nearly 70% of the participants in that survey said at least daily. So if you're me with my little checkbox, master and daily, sounds pretty good, right? Okay, let's have a look a little bit closer. This is some data from Gartner, and this is about their customers who call themselves agile enterprises, or organizations who hoped to become agile enterprises. So these are big organizations, probably make the majority of the software that we're using, or that most of us are using out there. And these are the ones that are trying to be agile. They are trying to embrace change. They are trying to deliver more quickly. They're trying to most likely have a DevOps culture. If we look at that data there, only 40% of them are currently practicing CI, which maybe is not that bad. I think more importantly is that 40% of them never expect to practice CI, which frankly I think is scary and a little frustrating for me as someone who likes to talk about CI and the importance of it. So I think there's something going on there. Why have people decided not to do CI? And then the last thing I want to share you to convince you that this isn't all sweet and lovely is some research that myself and a colleague did last year as part of product management for one of our products. We actually did a whole bunch of what we call contextual research. So that's basically talking to a bunch of you. We would interview developers, people in operations, sometimes some QAs. We would also watch them work. And we were particularly interested in a whole bunch of questions around continuous integration and continuous delivery. And the one I want to talk about today that's relevant to this talk is we asked people how did they define continuous integration and what were they doing in terms of continuous integration practices. And I'm going to move a bit closer so that I can tell you some of the things that these people said. So this is in response to a question, how do you define continuous integration? You commit some code, something picks it up and builds and makes sure it still builds. I push the code to the master branch after it's been tested on the test branch. That in return triggers something and gets deployed. Testing your code all the time, executing that you write all the time, making sure the code doesn't go stale. Okay, so those are a bunch of quotes from people, how do they define CI? And I think we can see that it's not like Jez's quote for doing CI, but frankly, if I didn't have my slide there and I hadn't practiced this talk, maybe my definition of CI would not be so great either. And we can see this last person sort of got the all the time, the daily part there. So we basically concluded nobody could actually sort of remember the key principles or the definition, but maybe in their practice they were actually doing those things. So we asked them to describe how they were working or any challenges that they had so that we could understand what they were doing, and we also observed their CI in practice. Here are some of the things that we saw when we did that. This is a quote. The most challenging thing is when you end up with a lot of features piled together in one commit. Anytime a feature is finally complete, then it gets merged into master. We tend to do anywhere between 15 and 50 branches in a push. So as you can see, and these quotes reflect the majority of the people that we talked to, most people were not doing those things that I thought were continuous integration. Now bear in mind, of the 100% that said they were practicing CI, 90% of the people had an answer that was like this. And I would like you to think about whether your answer would have been something like this as well. You would have said, yes, I do CI, but then in reality, maybe you're not doing something that actually is CI. And I think that's important. I'll talk about why it's important in a minute. So we can basically see, I think, that it is complicated. We might all have CI servers. In fact, I hazard a guess that of the people who raised their hands, are you doing continuous integration? You said that because you have a Jenkins build running, or you have a TeamCity build running, or maybe you have one of the products that I build running, because that's what most people do. They're like, yeah, we got a CI tool, so we're doing CI. But I don't think that's always the case. And my colleagues and I, because we're really nice people, this makes it sound like so nice, but we like to call this CI theatre. It's sort of pretending to do CI without actually doing it. And there's some key things that you can look for in yourselves or in your company, or if you're a consultant, if you go out and help people, that show what continuous integration theatre really is. And that would be if you are checking into your master branch, but you're not doing it regularly. Or perhaps you have really long-lived branches, so everybody's checking in all the time, maybe many times an hour, but they're doing it in their own branch. We like to call that continuous isolation, because you're just building up all your stuff in your own branch and not integrating it. So the warning really is, just because you have a CI server, depends how you use it to really be doing something that I would consider credible CI. But I might look like a software developer and not actually be one. I might be doing CI and not actually doing it, but who cares, right? I have this tool, it's helping me out, maybe I was better than before, maybe the people who are using it are better than they were before. I want to challenge you that we can all be better, and I'm going to tell you why I think it's particularly important to care about doing CI properly. If you're not doing CI in the way I described it, I really don't think you're getting all the benefits of continuous integration. So if you're working on branches longer than a day, you're most likely not creating collective ownership of your code. It's your feature, it's the thing that you're working on, and everybody else is working on their little thing, and screw you when you break the build because, it was your fault. You're not going to get that collective ownership, you're not going to get fast feedback, you're not going to break assumptions, you're not going to reduce your risks. You're really limiting the power that you could get from continuous integration. And I expect it's actually quite painful. And I want to quote again somebody from our survey, and I remember this person very clearly, and he was a great example of some of the things that I thought really stood out to us when we talk to people. So bear in mind, do you practice continuous integration? Yes. Do you have a CI tool? Yes. He said yes to all these things. And then we asked him about what his CI experience was about. And he basically explained the horror, this situation that he'd just been in. He had updated 100 files, and he'd made 7,000 lines of code. And he went into a code review, and he was like, oh my God, I cannot explain what I've been doing. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of other problems there, but in his case, what he said is, I wish there was a nicer way to decompose commits, because it's hard to keep everything in your head. And I am not, my colleagues are much better, has a much better poker face than me. I was just going, well, you could do CI the way I would do it, which is check in every day to your master branch, and then he would not have had this painful situation. And that's really what I'm talking about. If you ever feel that feeling, but you have a CI server running, think about what you're actually doing with that CI server, and think about whether you can improve your process. And then the final reason, which is why I proposed this talk to this particular conference, is I think that continuous integration is a foundation for doing continuous delivery. It's a foundation for doing continuous deployment. If you want to be like those people in 2009 and check in 10 times, deploy 10 times a day, you've got to be checking in more than that. And you've got to be doing all the things that I talked about. You can't be keeping everything isolated all the time. And the collective ownership part that I talked about before, I think it's very important for us to think about. We're trying to build this organization where there are software engineers, operations, business people, all sorts of people, and I think continuous integration is a great way for you to start to build that culture. So So let's assume that I've convinced you that it's a good practice to be doing. You probably aren't doing it quite right, but it's okay because I'm going to tell you how to save your love life or your continuous integration. Commit more often. Commit to continuous integration and commit more than once a day. Frankly, Jez is wrong. Once a day? Come on, you can do better than that. Once an hour, Pete, who's checking in now? You need to be doing it all the time. And I sort of joke, but I think that you would be surprised how often you could actually write a small test and check in. And it does not. Once a day actually isn't that great. So if you're already checking in once a day, aim for twice a day, aim for 2 times an hour. Embarrass me and tell me how often you do it. And then automate. Yeah, you're going to have to get some help with automation. So I doubt everybody is doing continuous integration manually at this point, but a lot of people don't automate as much as they can. And when you're moving from continuous integration to continuous delivery and continuous deployment, you want to be automating as much as you can. My team automates its release notes, for example, or we automate building of our environments. You really want to think about how much you can automate. So if you've already automated CI, that's great, but I challenge you, if you're doing anything more than once, ask yourself, can we automate this? And then finally, trunk-based development. Yeah, maybe some of you knew I would get here. I didn't really want to have a story about feature-based development versus trunk-based development. There are a lot of people with a lot of opinions, and I'm not necessarily one of them, but I want to share with you, I definitely saw in the survey that we did that those teams not practicing trunk-based development, not checking into their master branch on a daily basis, had a lot more problems and a lot more challenges with CI than those that were practicing trunk-based development. So if you are not practicing trunk-based development, I challenge you to think about it. And if you really can't, then fine, work on a short-lived feature branch and merge it to master. At least once a day, right? Everybody's got this. Master daily. Okay, so that is my story of continuous integration. I think we can see that everything on the surface looks great. There's some really important key principles behind continuous integration, and some of us in this room, some of the people in my organization were not making the most of it. So that's what I would challenge you to do. And basically, you get to decide how this love story ends. That's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So great talk. We learned a lot. So a lot of us apparently are practicing CI theater, right? So it's not apparently CI server. It's not what you have. It's how you use them, right? There you go. So at this point, we'll take a break for about 20 minutes. Use this time. There should be some snacks out here on the second floor. So grab something to eat, get some sugar. Go see our vendors. We have vendors here, first floor and the third floor. Don't leave them lonely up there, and get some stamps. All right, see you in about 20 minutes.